This is one of the most important movements in literature because it bridged the transition between realism and modernism. The symbolist movement in literature originated during the 1850s, 1860s in France and lasted until the beginning years of the 20th century, and it was a very broad movement in literature, and not only in literature but also in arts, in paintings, in music, and it continues even to the time of us in the contemporary years that we are living in, because this symbolic movement is not only about art and literature and philosophy, but it's about the human relationship and the world. Hello guys, and welcome back to another video about literature and also about literary criticism. My name is Sohail, and if you're interested in topics related to literature, reading, literary criticism and so on, hit that subscribe button to watch my future videos as well. The movement of symbolism was totally a reaction against some other movements before it, for example, realism, naturalism, and also positivism. So we can say that the movement of symbolism conveys ideas such as the personal, the irrational, the dreamlike state of consciousness, which relies highly on what? Which relies highly on metaphorical language to approximate, or let's say to symbolizes the eternal essence of being, which was abstracted from the scope of the five senses. So this was a difficult description of symbolism. Let me explain it in more simple language. To put it simply, the movements I just mentioned, I mean realism, naturalism, and positivism, they are dealing with what is external in our world, what we can see in the world and on the paper, in the books. But a symbolic movement is what's about the internal world of everything, the internal world of the individual and objects, and we are thinking about the meanings of the things in the world. Symbolism was primarily a movement in poetry in general, but it also goes beyond that, goes to fiction, goes to philosophy, also goes to actually paintings and music. It goes beyond that poetic actually sensation, but a symbolist was greatly influenced by the works of Charles Baudelaire. It was the actually prominent figure in this movement, especially his great work, The Flowers of Evil. It was a very influential work in the symbolic movement. We have also some other prominent figures in this field, for example, Stephen Mallarmé or Edgar Allan Poe, for example. There are certain themes about the symbolic movement and symbolic writers, and they are usually dealing with these important and famous themes in their artistic works. We are going to talk about 4 important themes in these works of symbolic creation, and let's talk about these 4 important interpretations. Number 1 is the inner life of the individual, and not only the individual, as I mentioned, but also the objects. When we are dealing with symbolic literature, we need to ponder and we need to think about the inner meanings of everything, the inner meanings of the objects, and we need to go beyond the literal meaning to the deep meanings of that object which the writer is describing in that piece of literature for more thematic interpretations. For example, a word apple can mean just the apple, but in the symbolic literature it means more than that, and it may refer to the Christian, I don't know, thematic interpretations. It can go beyond that simple apple object we have. So it's very important that in these works of literature you think about every word, every phrase, and every sentence to get more out of that book. So when we are dealing with an individual, in the case of symbolic literature, we need to ponder on emotional states, we need to ponder on dreams, internal moods, and mental passions of these characters, because everything can give us more information about that character. And this is totally modern, I think, because when we come to the modernism, we have James Joyce, Woolf, actually T.S. Eliot, and so on, we see that yes, these are very important. These emotional breakdowns are very important in the case of the characters. Number 2, in symbolic works of literature, we see a great number of journeys, voyages, and also quests, which acts as metaphors for these characters, acts as metaphors for exploration of the inner selves, for exploration of the inner consciousness of these characters, and these are very important for the individual analysis of these characters. So we have some journeys and voyages which we need to think about them. Number 3, sensual and spiritual love, which is also one of the most important themes in the case of a symbolic movement, because we see lots of poets are dealing with this tension in their lives between the sensual love of a woman and also the spiritual idealization of women. So this is one of them is physical, one of them is spiritual. So which of them is correct? Which of them is true? Which of them is more important? And always poets are dealing with this tension, and symbolic literature is dealing with that, is really the definition of that, because we see the physical beauty of a woman, we see the physical beauty of everything, and we need to think about the spiritual value of that figure. So this tension between the spiritual and sensual is always there in the works of symbolic movements, especially the prominent figure Charles Baudelaire and his poetry. We see lots of examples of this tension in his works. And number 4 is that in symbolic movements and the works of literature belonging to this type of movement, we see usually the urban life. I mean, the writer is describing the urban life in the background, in the setting of the novel, in the poetry or everything, which shows the transition from realism to the modernism, to the urban city life of modernism. This shows this transition to the world of 20th century, and this kind of urbanization is usually seen in the works of symbolic movement. In other words, we can say that to intimate things rather than stating them plainly is the main focus and the main aim of the symbolists. And this kind of literature, of course, needs a kind of poetic, metaphoric, and a musical language which gives more insights to the readers through a few number of words and phrases. So the writer tries to be poetic, tries to be metaphoric in order to use a few words but create a great and broad and widespread insight for the reader, because he needs to talk indirectly. If he talks directly, so this is realism, this is naturalism, so he needs to talk indirectly in the symbolic movement, and indirectly he needs to be poetic and metaphoric. The texts will be complex, more complex, but the reader will feel lots of aspects by reading these lines, and this is very valuable and beautiful, I think. Well, this is the end of this short video about this symbolic movement, and I tried my best to put the complex ideas of this movement into simple words and sentences. So I hope that you find it insightful and interesting to learn about these concepts. And let me know in the comment section down below about your ideas in this kind of movement. Have you read something in this type? Have you read something from Baudelaire or Edgar Allan Poe or Mallarmé or so on? And what do you think about this movement? Is it complex or interesting to follow? Just let me know in the comment section down below, and be sure to subscribe if you find my channel valuable. Thanks for your time and attention. Take care.